part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome to another edition of the Reghi and Roda podcast powered by MGM Northfield Park right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Shout out to our fantastic producer, Chase Smith, who makes us sound, well, fantabulous and outstanding. And he makes you out there in the podcatosphere able to find us and listen to this R&R podcast. And also, it is the week of Thanksgiving, Michael Reghi. So before we get into the woeful Cleveland Browns game from yesterday against the Buffalo Bills, to all of our listeners, we're extremely thankful for them, and we wish them and their families a wonderful Thanksgiving this week.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm very thankful for wonderful friends and colleagues like you, Kenny Rhoda, and you're right, all of our listeners and those of you that drop by with us here on R&R. We're wishing you and your families all the best and great Thanksgiving tidings. And a lot of football, too, right?
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of it right now because yesterday, we're taping this on a Monday morning. Yesterday, the Browns had to travel to, not Buffalo, but Detroit, while the Bills had to travel to Detroit, not Buffalo, and stay in a home game and play that wacky game because of the snow up there in Orchard Park and the surrounding areas. And so wasn't sure what to expect, Michael, in the game yesterday. How much would that affect Buffalo? Would it take them a while to get going? Yes. Would the Browns show us something different? No. Final score 31-23. Buffalo wins it after the Browns held them without a first down, Michael, to the 8-minute mark of the second quarter. And again, we see Cleveland start fast, scripted plays, first drive right down the field. Nick Chubb featured 7 touches in that first drive. They go up 7-0, and then the final score is closer than the game really was, as the Browns got some garbage touchdowns late as Buffalo jumped out to a 28-10 lead then.
Yeah, while there's some good things in it, Ken, you just laid it out. Overall, hey, look, the bottom line is a win-loss thing, isn't it? I mean, so you can do all the positive points that you want from that one yesterday. The bottom line is that they got beat. They're now, what the hell are they, 3-7?
Yep.
Is that what they are? 3-7 with 7 games to go. And any thoughts of playoff hopes that were infinitesimal anyway. Well,
right.
Now they dropped even. You're not, 3-7. So basically now they got to run the table, and I don't see much opportunity of that happening. And Kenny, listen, I don't care how good an NFL team is. 171 yards rushing for the Buffalo Bills. Now, you and I have been doing this a long time. How the hell many NFL games are you going to have a shot to sniff of winning in the fourth quarter when you're giving up $171 to the other team running the football?
Yeah, more than likely about an 8% chance, Reg, right? I'm going to just throw that number out there because think of this, Michael. They got most of those yards in 2.5 quarters because, like I said, they didn't have a first down until about the 8-minute mark of the second quarter, so they picked up that amount. I don't know if they studied the Cincinnati Bengals game book or playbook, Reg, and just I still don't know what they were thinking. You can't stop the run, the Cleveland Browns, and if I'm opposing teams, I'm just running the football down there. It's mind-boggling that teams. Zach Taylor with the Cincinnati, and even yesterday with the Bills, they still want to try and throw deep. You know what? Screw it. I don't care what their weakness is on defense. We're going to do what we do, even if they're taking it away. Yesterday, the Bills were wise enough, though, unlike the Bengals, to say, okay, we tried it for a quarter and a half. Now let's just exploit their weakness and run the ball down their throats.
Yeah, and again, I brought this up earlier, here as we do R&R after Browns games every week, so it's going to be the first time here. But I'm very disappointed in Andrew Berry's roster construction, especially on the defensive side of the football. You want to throw Stefanski and Joe Woods in there as the head coach, and that's fine. That's fine. But just remember, when teams are put together in the offseason. Kenny, can you explain? I don't understand what Andrew Berry where he was thinking, Kenny, the interior of the Browns defensive line, I'm not sure any of those young men, good young men, but I'm not sure any of them are of NFL caliber quality. I'm serious now. I'm not sure they are. I watch every play and then over and over and over again. I watch it, Kenny, like coach. And, I know what I'm looking at. I don't think they're NFL caliber defensive tackles, Ken. They're small. They don't handle their gap assignments real well. They're getting pushed around. Then that trickles down to the second layer, as you and I have talked a lot about the linebacking core, right?
Yep.
Who really, again, a smallish group that is built on more that can run. Ken, I don't know. As I said, as I started this mini rant here, I brought this up before in our show. And I think Andrew Berry really dropped the ball with his defensive front seven construction. Really did.
It starts with his theory, Michael, right?
Yep.
They said, forget the bulk, forget the strong guys. We want fast, quick, hybrid guys on our defense. And we're going to take safeties and make them linebackers and make them defensive linemen. And it hasn't worked, right? They've been pushed around all season long, out physicaled all season long, and it shows, as you said, in the running game right there, $171 with yesterday's game. And the Bills don't have a good running game, Michael. Normally, they're led by their quarterback, Josh Allen, running the football, and usually it's the flip side. I think the stats going into yesterday's game, Michael, I think it was the Bills' defense had given up about 550 yards rushing in the last 3 games. So I'm expecting the Browns to be able to exploit that with Nick Chubb, and they run for 171. Instead, the Browns ran for 80 yards, and the Bills doubled that total and ran it against the Browns. And you're right. It goes back to the personnel selections of one Andrew Berry, and we'll throw in, Mr. Analytics, Paul DePodesta, and his front office. I like to call them the Ivy League Tower, there in Berea, looking down on it, thinking they're smarter than everybody else with their Ivy League coach, Mr. Penn, Kevin Stefanski. And this team is 3 and don't give me this, well, Deshaun Watson's coming back in 2 weeks, everything's going to change. How the hell is Deshaun Watson going to stop the run on defense? How the hell is Deshaun Watson going to break up a pass play in the end zone? I'm sorry. He may be able to put more points on the board than Jacoby Brissett, but he ain't doing a damn thing on offense. And then don't get me started on Mike Prefer's special team. How the hell still has a job 10 weeks or 10 games into this season? I don't understand. He should be giving thanks to whoever for still having a job heading into next week.
Yeah, they're giving big thanks in this week of doing that. And I tell you what, Kenny, the Haslams, man, we got to find a point where we've got consistency, sustainability with our decision makers and our coaches. I wonder how they feel about that this morning. Yeah, in theory, that sounds good.
Right.
But Ken, I don't know. I mean, I know there's 7 games left, but tell me they're not going to make playoffs. So you got some big decisions to make with that. You're just going to, let's bring this back and do it over again next year. Under what conditions? How do you know? So is Andrew Berry suddenly going to have an epiphany and start to get bigger, stouter, quality caliber interior defensive tackles? Is he going to do the same for stronger, bigger linebackers that can step in A and B gaps and make hits on running backs? So he's going to resurrect the whole defense now in this offseason because he realizes he made a mistake. I think that's wishful thinking. I think it's very wishful thinking, and it just isn't going to be reality.
They'll have to do something, and he'll have to do something if he still has a job. I think he will. They're going to have the get-out-of-jail-free card of, hey, you know what? Deshaun Watson only played the last 6 games, and we weren't expecting him to be that out that long with a suspension, and we knew we had a defense that was a work in progress. We figured we'd outscore people, but we couldn't do it with Deshaun Watson out. So give us another year, Jimmy Haslam. That's going to be the plea of Andrew Berry. And then the plea of Kevin Stefanski is going to be, hey, you handcuffed me, man. I didn't have my quarterback till the final 6 games, and we were 3-8 at that time because I'm expecting them to lose to Tom Brady in Tampa Bay on Sunday.
I know, I got you, but you just said it, and you're so right. What does that have to do with the defensive side of the football?
Right, yeah.
That is an abomination.
Well, then, you know what? He's going to go down with the ship then.
Well,
because
then,
he should have fired Joe Woods and Mike Prefer, right? But he's sticking with his guys, Kevin Stefanski. Okay, now
then that's on you.
Yes, absolutely.
That's on you.
And
you may ultimately pay for it with your job. I get it.
Bingo.
Everybody has their guys and boys.
Yep.
If I was starting something of any consequence, would one of my first calls be to Kenny Rhoda and say, hey, I really, you're my guy. Yep. We've been together. I trust you. Yes, of course. But when there comes that point, as it has with Kevin Stefanski's guys that aren't getting the job done, then it's on you.
I would hope and I would expect you to tell me, hey, you're not pulling your weight on this, man. I love you, but you're not doing it, and I got to keep my job. Yeah. And I do the same. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know you would, and that's why we work well together. I know
exactly. And if it ain't working, you'll find something else. But I got to keep my job. I'm going in a different direction. Thanks for the time. Enjoy the severance pay, and let's get. We'll stay in touch over the holidays. So and right now, Kevin Stefanski it's tiresome, Michael. The fans are getting tired hearing the same bullshit each and every week from him at his press conferences. I got to look at the tape. We got to get things fixed. Joe Woods, Mike Prefer. Oh, it's a team thing. It's not one thing. It's no. What have either one of those done, right? Prefer or Woods this year? And granted, they may not have had, the talent they needed. And here's what I'll say. Woods, the first year, I gave him a pass, right, Michael? Because they focused on the offense. Remember that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then they supposedly brought in guys years 2 and 3 to fix the defense. Well, he's had 3 years. That's long enough for me. And I know Jakeem Grant went down, with an injury. He was supposed to be their return guy. And so, but one guy is going to affect the entire special teams for Mike Prefer. How many block kicks already? How many, nice returns by the opposition? And so I'm sorry, both of those guys, if Haslam comes to Stefanski and says, you can keep your job, but you got to fire Woods and Prefer, what's your decision going to be, Kevin?
Anybody is going to say, you're going to try to stick up for your guy, I'm sure, to the owner. But when it's put like that, Kenny, you really have no choice. And that's why I said a moment ago, look, this offseason, who knows? If they only win another 1 or 2 football games here, Ken, let's say, what if they wind up 5-12?
Yeah.
How do you think that when they start the day after that on those Black Mondays, right?
Yeah,
that happened the day after the NFL regular season final Sunday. Man, you don't know that. Hey, we've seen it before. The one thing you know about the Haslams, you have no idea about their unpredictability from day to day.
Oh, I know one thing about them. They're not patient.
So you're right. That their patience isn't a virtue.
No, it is not. So we'll see how that plays out, Reg, when the season comes to an end. But you've got 1 more week of Jacoby Brissett, and then you've got 6 weeks of Deshaun Watson to show what the offense potentially could look like next year. Now, having said that, will Kareem Hunt be back next year? Don't know. In the final year of his contract, he wanted out, asked to be traded, right? Conklin, how many more years left does he have at right tackle with his broken down body, where he, barely can play an entire game or stay healthy for an entire season? So, yeah, you'll get a little bit of a look-see, right, at this offense with Watson, but it won't be exactly the same next year. So it's going to be an audition for both Stefanski and Deshaun Watson these final 6 games after Sunday's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they come to town at First Energy Stadium.
Yeah, that's right. They got Jed Wills, man, not playing good football, Kenny. Number one, first round draft pick, a guy from Nick Saban's Alabama, and then that thing, 9 times out of 10, that's going to go well. That's going to go well. But, of course, the one guy, there aren't many that Saban has produced and developed at Alabama, and Browns have one of them. Left tackle, no less, offensively. I'm not a Jed Wills guy, Kenny. I just don't think he plays consistent football. And so you got to think about that. You just mentioned Conklin. I mean, I love Wyatt Teller. I love Joel Bitonio, but Wyatt Teller didn't play well yesterday.
No, he had a very poor game.
Very poorly yesterday.
Yep.
And and look, we've given Jacoby Brissett kudos almost every week. Again, though, Kenny, his numbers look great. He threw for 324 on a day when Chubb carries the ball 19 times for 14 yards, or the other way around, maybe
14 for 19.
14 for 19
carries.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just, if you're a Browns fan, that's like, what? That's unthinkable. That's not going to happen. The offensive line did not play well yesterday. And so here they sit.
2 weeks in a row.
You're right. That's right.
2 weeks in a row. Miami dominated them last week as well. And Brissett's numbers, you said, he threw
good
for 324 and 3 touchdowns. But, Michael, I went back play-by-play. All right?
Yep.
It was 28-10. Garbage time came around.
I got
Brissett in the final 2 drives, 5 of 7, 60 yards, a touchdown, 5 of 7, 61 yards, and a touchdown. So
that's 120 yards.
Right there, out of his, game total in garbage time.
When the game's over, as you basically said, the game's over. Bills aren't losing at that point.
No.
I get you. And Kenny, what can you explain to me? I went back in my mindset, and I know I'm not as sharp as I used to be at thinking of the stuff I've seen.
Right.
But and I say that poking fun of myself. But Kenny, I can't at any level, other than maybe, Pop Warner, have seen back-to-back quarterback sneaks on 3rd and 1 and then 4th and 1. And listen, and if Jacoby Brissett, called off a play, but he didn't, you know why? Because look at it again. On the 4th down snap, Kenny, it was an empty backfield.
Yeah.
There was no running back on the football field.
So you knew what was coming.
Yeah. It's either that or he's going to throw the ball.
Right.
And that wasn't happening. So, I mean, just absolutely horrendous. I don't ever remember seeing that at the NFL level or major college level, even on back-to-back quarterback sneaks on 3rd and 4th and 1 and being denied in both of them.
Right. Yeah. Michael, he had, I think coming into this year, he was like 31 for 32 on quarterback sneaks for first down, right? He learned it from Tom Brady, supposedly. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
But guess what? You're into week 10. The film is out there that they like to do that. Now, Brady still is able to execute it, but let's be honest, Jacoby Brissett's no Tom Brady, okay? He may have learned something from Tom, but not everything from Tom, and he'll play against him next week in his final start for the Browns. But, yeah, I was at Jersey Sports Bar and Grill in Canton, just down from the Pro Football Hall of Fame with the Stark County Browns backers, and everybody, don't look at me. So I don't know what the hell Stefanski's thinking there. The first one, I had no problem with it. Sure, you've been successful with it. Try and pick it up. Well, I think I wrote down, Reg, the Browns in the second half reached the Buffalo 16 and the Buffalo 27-yard line and came away with 0 points in those 2 separate trips. Think about that. Inside the red zone once, just outside the red zone a second time, 0 points they came away with. And
damn hard to do, right?
It is. It's very hard to do. So again, this is it is an organizational wide problem from the owners who aren't the best, not even close to being the best. Hell, they're not even close to being average owners in the NFL, to a questionable front office now, looking at their personnel selections on defense, to a coach who was coach of the year his rookie year, but has fallen off drastically in his next 2 years, right?
Yep.
And you have no idea what the future holds for this football team, but they think their savior's Deshaun Watson. So that's the one thing that they're holding on to right now, right? It's not Stefanski anymore. Honeymoon's over. It's not Andrew Berry flaws. It's not the Haslams. They're holding on to their $230 million man that he's going to save everything in Deshaun Watson in 2 weeks.
Do you though, whether you're Andrew Berry or Jimmy and D Haslam, do you make abundantly clear if, let's just say the head coach, because I think he probably is. I don't think they're going to fire the head coach. Again, you brought it up. I think you're right. They may tell him, though, you got to make a move with your special team head coach and your defensive coordinator. That might happen, and that might be behind closed doors, and then they'll lie about it and say, oh, no, that's not the case. Anyway, though, if you were them, would you make it abundantly clear that we either make the playoffs in 2023, Kevin Stefanski, or you're gone?
Absolutely.
You're gone. That's it.
Put the pressure on. That's it. Okay? You kept your guys you wanted. Well, now you had to – I'd tell them 3 things. Number 1, you're firing the defensive coordinator. Number 2, you're firing the offensive coordinator. Number 3, consider giving up play calling duties and just be the head coach of this team. All right?
Thank you.
If you want to stick around, those are our 3 commands, if you will, from the Haslams. And, you better make the playoffs next year or you're gone no matter what you do. I'd lay it out there to them, man. This is it. This is the NFL. Yeah, the pressure's on. How are you going to handle this? You want to stay here with those, those things? Or do you want to, call it quits and go somewhere else and be an assistant coach or whatever it is that you were before you came here?
You won't be a head coach anywhere else. You're going to be a coordinator, maybe a coordinator, or maybe a quarterback's coach / play caller. Who knows? But, yep, that's exactly what it'd be. And you know what, Kenny? You kind of just Kevin Stefanski, you don't want to operate and work that way?
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye. No, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
We're paying you. This is what you're going to do. You don't want to do it, then you let us know right now, and we'll part ways.
Reg,
real simple.
How can he script opening drives that lead to a touchdown and an early lead, but then be unable to make adjustments once the opposing team adjusts to your offense? To me, that's coaching right there. That's showing that he doesn't have the mental capacity to adapt under pressure situations once the game started and his scripted plays are out the window. Yeah, you got 7 on that. What are you going to do for the remaining 3.5 quarters, Kevin Stefanski? And he has showed that he has struggled to adapt to opposing defensive coordinators and what they're throwing back at him.
It's kind of incredible, isn't it?
When
you laid it out wonderfully well, and that's exactly what happens. Now, how many of what did I hear or see yesterday? Maybe is that 7 of the 10, or is it 6 of the 10? They've put points on the board in that opening drive, either touchdown or a field goal. I think it's in that area.
It's at least half, right?
I mean,
half
more
the
than
games, if not more. So, you look at that and you go, okay, great. You've been able to break down film all week long. You're scripting these plays. It works. But then all of a sudden, when you don't have the extra hours, the extra time, right, to adjust to it, you can't handle it on the fly. And I brought your name up the other day. I was talking with somebody, and we were talking about TV stuff, right? And to this day, and you're the master at this, and I'm still working on it as I do a little bit of TV here and there. When the producer's in my ear, when I'm talking, I still get thrown off on occasion, right? So it's not a strength I know a weakness of mine, right? So that's, so I say, hey, if you're counting me out, give me a 10 and a 5. That's all I need. And I said, but I know my partner. You can recite the alphabet in Greek terms, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta. You could scream that in his ear, and he'd be able to continue his thought process and take you out and not be affected by it. So it's something I continue to work on to get better at. I wonder how do you, as a head coach, better yourself in that area, right? Where your scripted plays are fine, but then once the game starts and you've got to adjust on the fly, he can't do it. How does a coach get better at doing that? I don't know, Reg, right? I'm not sure. So, and that's a tip of the cap to you for your ability to do that. And I practice that, but I'm wondering, how does Kevin Stefanski practice something he's not good at? In fact, he's awful at.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment, number one. And, repetitions, you as repetitions and as it happens, again, it'll be something that just starts to come second nature for you. But, Kenny, I'm just at the point, like I said, and I don't know. I don't want him calling plays anymore either. Take it again. You brought it out perfect. First drives. Yeah. Okay. So first drives, that's done basically on Wednesday and Thursday.
Right.
But what in the hell goes on after that it just doesn't have the same positive results for this offense and this football team. And, like we just talked about yesterday. And I say, listen, you can't say, well, they're playing Buffalo, one of the best teams in the NFL, or, we played Philly, one of the best teams in the NFL. No, you can't do that and then applaud and give them all kinds of kudos when you play teams that look to have less talent than you and poorer than you are. So, Kenny, I wish I had a concrete answer as to why this goes askew for him and Van Pelt. I don't know how much I don't even know how much input Van Pelt has in the offensive game plan and the in-game play calling. And as you said, looking at, I don't know. Do you know? Do we know what does Van Pelt have with Stefanski as far as being a voice, a strong voice with what happens on the offensive side of the ball?
No idea. I have no clue. None whatsoever. Right? Yeah. And let's remember this. The playoff game they won, who called the plays? It was Alex Van Pelt because Kevin Stefanski was home with COVID. Yeah. Now, granted, the Steelers gifted them some points there in that playoff game, but still. And Reg, I just looked this up. Do you realize right now at 3-7, there are only 3 other teams in the NFL with a worse record than the Cleveland Browns?
I do know that. And you know why I know it is because, I'm just surprised as hell that the city I was born and raised in, that football team who has been the drag of the National Football League, just won their 4th game yesterday, Kenny, and 3rd in a row.
Yeah, Detroit Lions.
With a head coach that I don't think that much of.
4-6.
They're 4-6 and won 3 in a row.
Yeah.
So, again, as you said, so what, 3? There's only 3 football teams.
Carolina, because they played an extra game. They're 3-8.
They've played a game more,
And Houston, 1-8-1. Now, there are a lot of teams that have the identical record as the Browns at 3-7, surprisingly. But only 3 teams with a worse record as we speak today than the Browns. The Houston Texans, 1-8-1. The Chicago Bears, 3-8. And the Carolina Panthers, 3-8. That's it. Everybody else is either equal to the Browns at 3-7 or better than the Browns as we head into whatever week this is in the NFL.
Week 12.
Week 12, 13, whatever.
Or something. So again, now, just off what you threw right out there on the table. So again, regardless of what we think of them, if you're Jimmy and Dee Haslam this morning, and you're having your, day after conversation with your head football coach, I'm probably going off.
Yeah.
Because it's, no, this ain't working. This is unacceptable. And again, it's going to cost you all your jobs at the end of the year. And then a lot of the guys on this damn playing roster better get that through their mind thoughts too. That, you know what? Listen, man, you're not guaranteed for anything. There's a handful that are. A handful. I mean, Nick Chubb's going to be back here, and Batonio, and I love Wyatt Teller, but my God, yesterday, man, he looked like a high school kid learning how to play the position.
Yeah. So it's frustrating, Reggie. It really is. And so we'll see what happens in the final game this week with Brissett at quarterback against Brady and company. And then Deshaun Watson comes back and he'll start at the woeful Houston Texans. Could you imagine if the Texans are 9-1 and the Browns go in there with Deshaun Watson?
That might be the death knell, Ken.
Oh, my.
If you're the Haslams, think about it. That might be the death knell for all of them.
His first game back in 700 days in the regular season. He goes into Houston, and they get only their second win. Oh, boy. You think it's ugly now. That could be real ugly the day after that. So let's do this, Reg. That's enough on that crappy team right now, okay? Because it's the week, right?
Yeah.
We're going to get a break in, and when we come back, we'll switch directions for a little bit here as we went longer than we thought we would, but that's what happens when you talk about the crappy Browns. You forget time and just keep pointing out all the negative things that surround that organization, and there's a lot. When we come back, the game, it's Ohio State, it's Michigan, it's number 2 against number 3. It's 2 undefeated teams in Columbus, Saturday at high noon. When we come back on the R&R podcast, Reg, how about we dive into that for about 10 minutes and preview that matchup between the Wolverines and the Buckeyes? All right, we'll do that when the R&R podcast continues here, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
What's up everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tybus Powell.
And we are your hosts of the Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tyvus, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
And welcome back to the R&R podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park. Northfield Park, your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch the excitement of live harness racing every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday evening with a 6 p.m. post time. Wager and win daily on top thoroughbred and harness tracks from around the world with action starting around noon. Plus, how about this? You can enter to play the free handicapping contest every Sunday for a chance to win some cold hard cash. Top prize, $500. Registration for that begins at 11 a.m. Free admission, free parking every day at Northfield Park. All right, Michael, last year, Michigan ended a drought, a long losing streak against the Buckeyes. They out-muscled, they out-physicaled, they outsmarted the Buckeyes last year, ran it down their throats, won a game in Ann Arbor to snap the losing streak. And now here we are a year later as Michigan, even though they got beat in the playoffs last year, Michael, they're undefeated, coming in at number 3. Buckeyes are undefeated, coming in at number 2. Both are coming off close victories that was basically scared the bejesus out of you if you were a Wolverines fan or a Buckeyes fan. But all that's in the past, and the setup is as good as maybe, go back to 2006, right? When they were 1-2, right? Yeah,
correct.
So I think
Ohio State won
close as it's been.
42-39, a great game, just a tremendous game. Lived up to its billing. You got elements. I'm really excited and happy for both football teams. I mean, it's serious that they're both 11-0. That's terrific. They're the dominant forces in the Big Ten, and I think even fans of the Wisconsins and Iowas and Sparties, and if they're, I think they know that's what's up. Penn State is. To me, Kenny, they're a little bit below. I mean, Michigan just destroyed Penn State this year. Granted, it was at home. Ohio State was in a bit of a closer game, but Ohio State showed that their roster is more talented. And I'm not a big James Franklin fan, but they are what now? Those are their 2 losses. So Penn State's 9-2. Good football team. But the bottom line is, Ken, this is intriguing for a lot of different ways. I think Ohio State has the best to me it's the best passing offense in the college game this year, and I think they've shown that the receiving core, and they even haven't had Jackson Smith and Jigba, and it doesn't really matter that much because they've got so much talent at the receiving core. C.J. Stroud has played very, very well in almost every game. He's had a couple little segments of games where maybe not quite what's expected, but, overall, again, to me, it's a top passing game in the country. And Michigan's offensive line and running game, I don't know where you want to put them. 1, 2, 3. So I know they're top 3. There's no question about that in the country, and maybe with the best offensive line from just a power standpoint in the country. So I think it's going to be fascinating on both sides of the football. Michigan's defense has been by the number better this year, but Ohio State's defense under D coordinator Knowles has made improvements from where they were a year ago. So should be fascinating.
Reg, I look at this and the Buckeyes have scored about 100 more points than the Wolverines, but the Wolverines have given up about 100 points less, I think, than the Buckeyes, somewhere in that vicinity, right?
Yeah, no, that's right on, right? Yeah, in that area, yep.
So therein lies the strengths, okay? The running game, Blake Corum got dinged up this past week. We'll see if he's 100%, if he can go this week. We saw Travion Henderson in a walking boot on the sideline yet again for the Buckeyes after starting that game, and they went to Dallin Hayden, who's a fantastic true freshman.
Terrific.
He led them to forget C.J. Stroud. It was Dallin Hayden who led them to victory at Maryland this past weekend. It was a 3-point game late in that game, 33-30. They win going away thanks to a late turnover touchdown. But the running game is average at best for the Buckeyes, regardless of who's been in there, because it has not been consistent. Don't know the status of Mayan Williams. He could be out for this game. You got Henderson. You'll have to wait and see. They may have to start a true freshman at running back for them. And in recent weeks, their passing game has struggled somewhat too. And I know the Northwestern game, the weather affected that. That's fine. But Stroud's been a little bit off as of late. He has, when I think of a Heisman Trophy guy, I think every game, boom, boom, maybe he has one bad one, but 2 or 3 where you look at the stat, Rutgers, Northwestern, Maryland, so to me, the Buckeyes have yet to play their best game offensively against a legitimate opponent, okay? Defensively, they're going to give up a few points because they take chances under Knowles, right? That's his MO. He's going to put some guys out on an island. They're going to blitz you and, take some chances because they want to create turnovers, get to the quarterback. And McCarthy, it'll be interesting to see how he handles and reads that, defense, right? Where's it coming from? Can he read it correctly? I think that's going to be a key for Michigan. I know they can run the ball, Michigan. They're going to get there 150, 200 yards rushing, I think, Michael. I think it's going to be on McCarthy and whether or not at times when he has to throw the football, will he be able to make those plays in the passing game for Michigan? Because if I'm them, I want to run it as much as possible, shorten the game, and keep that offense that you talked about on the sidelines for Ohio State.
Oh, no question. And that boils it down to exactly what it's going to be. And so which particular aspect of that you just laid out, which unit is going to have the most success will, pretty much give you your winner. Again, it is intriguing in a lot of different ways. Michigan ran for, I say 300 last year against Ohio State. It was actually 298, but okay.
We can round up.
And 6 touchdowns. Now, if that happens again, well, obviously that certainly favors Michigan and gives them a much better chance to win. I can't imagine it, though, getting to those extremes like it did a year ago. Kenny, I was actually surprised because, and I respect the Ohio State fans that say it, that was just a physical, dominating performance. Michigan just absolutely pushed Ohio State around last year defensively. Yes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And if you're an Ohio State fan and trying to say, well, that's not, no, that's exactly what it was. So you could say, oh, no, well, fine, but then you're not dealing with reality. So,
that's why Jim Knowles is here, because of what happened in the Michigan game.
That's exactly right. If that happened to No, it didn't happen to that degree. Ohio State also got beat by Oregon last year, correct? But it wasn't as physically dominant as that. The thing is, though, Michigan's defensive secondary, the strength of their defense is that front seven. They're very, very good. The secondary has got some they've shown some warts and some issues when the front seven hasn't been able to get home against quarterbacks. So I think that's something I'm sure that Ryan Day and his offensive coaches are going to look at. I expect Stroud and Ohio State to, given, and it sounds like the weather is going to be fine, Kenny, I would expect them to look to see if, again, last year, he threw the football very, very well.
Right.
That wasn't the problem. The problem was what we just said for Ohio State was on the other side of the ball. They couldn't get off the field. And Michigan ran for 300 on them. So, again, I think Stroud and Ohio State, Ken, I really do. I think they're going to look to throw the football this week and look to win the football game that way, with that being their dominant presence on the offensive side.
Early weather forecast, cloudy with showers, high around 50, winds 10 to 15 miles an hour, chance of rain 50%. So might rain, might not. That's what we're dealing with, and it's only Monday as we tape this. Reg, the thing that I need to see from Ohio State is a better running game, okay? They need to be able to establish that, and then, well, how do you stop them? Pick your poison, right? But you won't know, at least they'll know, because of practice, but they're not going to let us know as to which running backs will be available until an hour before game time when they have to list that, right? Yep. And the other thing is, does Jackson Smith and Jigba, have they been holding him out just for this game in the Big Ten Championship in the last 4 games? If you're a Buckeye fan, you're saying, well, there are 4 games left if you're confident, right? You beat Michigan, you win the Big Ten Championship, and then you're playing 2 more in the college football playoffs. That's your mindset. That's Ohio State's mindset. So have they saved him for these last potentially 4 games? And if you add him in to who the best player on Ohio State is not C.J. Stroud. The best player on Ohio State's football team is Marvin Harrison Jr. All right. If I'm looking at it from the eye test, and at the next level, who's going to excel? No doubt in my mind. I don't know that C.J. Stroud's going to be effective based on former Ohio State quarterbacks who have looked good in college and haven't excelled at the NFL level. But I do know that wide receivers have excelled at the NFL level coming from Ohio State. And Marvin Harrison may be the best of anybody who's ever played wide receiver at Ohio State. And he's only a true sophomore, and he has to come back next year. To me,
that's right.
He's the best player on the team. And so
that's fair.
Can Michigan shut him down? Because if it
I don't
were me,
think so. No.
I'd throw him the ball 20 times until they stop. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just like they exploited whoever it was at Utah with Jackson Smith and Jigba in the Rose Bowl last year.
Right.
I'm going at Marvin Harrison until you double, triple, quadruple team him and stop him, because to me, he should be, if I were voting Heisman, he'd get my vote. I'd vote Marvin Harrison #1 for the Heisman Trophy, because I think he's the best player in college football that I've seen this year. Now, I haven't seen everybody, but and I'll preface that with what I've seen.
Well, damn high praise, but yet, yeah, he's worthy. Great bloodlines, of course, with his daddy being outstanding as an NFL receiver. And yeah, I think regardless of what happens and how their running back room is healthy or not, and you're right, the freshman Hayden did a terrific job against Maryland, but this is a little different defense now you're running at than the Maryland Terrapins. But yeah, I would expect to see a big day early, a strong attempt to have a big day going at maybe just some average playing ability in that defensive secondary for Michigan. So Stroud needs to. He can solidify the Heisman Trophy if he has a huge one on Saturday.
Michael, he could be the Heisman Trophy winner if he goes out and he throws for 400 yards and beats Michigan in the shoe.
That's right, Bino.
He could solidify himself as the #1 pick if he wins the Heisman Trophy.
This Bino Cook. Bino would say it. That's right, man.
Absolutely. For the old timers listening on the podcast, you know who Bino Cook is. You young kids, you have no idea who Bino Cook is.
Look it up.
I can hear it in my headset. He can't hear. Oh, that's the bloopers classic, from Bino Cook. Classic stuff there. The other thing I'll say, Michael, and we'll get out of here. If Michigan elects to play more of a prevent defense where they don't want to get beat over the top, I need to see if Ryan Day will accept the underneath stuff, because he still likes to beat you with the big play. You know, he's like a lot of these stubborn coaches, right? This is who we are. We beat you over the top. Well, they're dropping 2 safeties deep on every play. They're zoning it up, and you're still going to try and go over the top. Will Ryan Day check his ego at the door and take what the defense gives them until they change that defense? That's one thing I'm curious to see how Michigan plays it, and then how Day adapts, because at times they just, we're still going deep. I don't care. We're still going. No, in this game, you very little margin for error, because there's an outside chance whoever loses this game, if it's a close game, still might get into the college football playoff, but that's not guaranteed. What is guaranteed is if you win this game and win the Big Ten, you are in the playoffs. So you can't mess around too long, and if you're having trouble because they're taking away the deep ball, you better adjust quickly. And he can't wait till the 3rd or 4th quarter like he's done against some of these teams that are the also-rans.
I'll give Ryan Day a little bit of, something that he might consider this week. Go back to 18. Now, it was Don Brown, the defensive coordinator for Michigan, who all Ohio State did was run 12 to 18-yard crossing routes all day long and turned them all into big plays and got everything they wanted. That, again, I'd go try to dust that off and see if that works against Jesse Minter, this Michigan defensive coordinator, who is not named Don Brown and has been terrific all year long. Now, again, this is going to be the best they've faced. I thought the game against Penn State was going to be, again, Kenny, but they ran for 420 yards and just manhandled Penn State and Franklin's team. So this is going to be their biggest test far and away. And again, trying to deal with the Ohio State passing game, I think, is going to be interesting to watch and see Michigan's approach to try to do that.
Should be a lot of fun. Everybody enjoy that one on Saturday. Again, high noon, Ohio State and Michigan from Columbus. All right, Reg, we'll do this again next week, and we'll be able to wrap up that game as well as the Browns in Tampa Bay, because Saturday, Sunday, back-to-back, those two big games. We'll break it down next week on the R&R podcast. Have a great Thanksgiving, buddy, all right?
Yeah, you too, my man. You and the family. I hope everything is great. And for all of you, enjoy Thanksgiving. And, we'll talk to you next week.